Alright, so this is the final project for the TMS astronomy class, and there are 4 of us in this class, and we're each going to make 2 short videos, and then put all those videos together, and they're going to detail the full evolution of a star. Okay, so I'm going to start off with the Hertzsprung-Russel diagram, which is normally called an HR diagram, and an HR diagram is a tool that astronomers use to classify and then to study stars. And the diagram plots a star's luminosity against its color. So luminosity is how much light a star really gives off, and that's different than what we see because some stars are closer than other stars. Okay, and so we plot this brightness against a star's color, and a star's color ranges from red or orange to white, and then it can go on to blue. And similar to brightness, a star's color isn't random, so color corresponds directly to temperature, and this is why when you heat up something, it's going to first glow red hot, and then it's going to glow whitish blue hot. Okay, and so when we plot stars like this with brightness against color, they don't show up on the chart randomly. In fact, there's a very predictable order which they show up on, and this is called the main sequence. And so you may have heard the main sequence star of main sequence stars. And what that means is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. The majority of stars live in this main sequence. And stars which are not in the main sequence are either going to be straggling, so behind on their development process, or just beginning their development process, or they're going to be giants. Okay. And then, so stars will go through certain combinations of these during their full life, which we'll talk about later. Okay, so you can see a full diagram over here. And one thing to notice is that there are a lot of stars at the bottom right, and they're not clearly on the main sequence. So these are baby stars, and slowly these stars will basically just drift over to the main sequence, and then evolve upwards on the main sequence. Okay, and we're going to learn about these protostars with Marissa in the next section. Okay, so a star doesn't also have to start at the bottom of the diagram, so that's what we've been talking about, but it could coalesce a bunch of gas and start out as a giant with enough mass and brightness to be at any point on the main sequence. Okay, and once a star is within the main sequence, so once it develops and then gets onto the main sequence, it doesn't move around within the main sequence. It can move off of the main sequence, but it's not going to gain mass, so it's not going to get brighter or dimmer or anything. What it's going to do is it's going to change color and change how stuff is reacting. Okay, so one interesting area of the HR diagram is the instability strip, and in the instability strip, we get what are called variable stars, and variable stars vary on a periodic and predictable way, but sometimes they can vary somewhat randomly, and these variations can take from hours to years, and basically because they vary, we can use these stars to calculate distance, so they're sometimes referred to as cosmic yardsticks. And so you can see the instability strip highlighted over here, but basically just with this specific mass and temperature range, there is an instability within the star. Okay, so for stars close, I'm going to talk about the 2 possible life paths, which we're going to be talking about throughout this video. So for stars close to the size of our sun, most of its life will be spent in the main sequence. And then when the hydrogen fuel is finally spent, these stars will transition into red giants. So towards the end of their life, with most of the possible fuel spent, the star is going to shed off its outer layers into what is called a planetary nebula, which is kind of a tricky name because it's not what planets come from, but it'll shed out its outer layers into this nebula. Okay. And then its outer layers are gone, so its core is going to be left behind, and that's what we call a white dwarf. So the core of a once large star is the white dwarf, and you can see them on the diagram down here. Okay, and so the 4 next sections of this video are going to detail that whole evolution process, so from being a baby to shedding off its outer layers and becoming a white dwarf. Okay, so larger stars have a different sort of life path. So they die much younger, and as a rule of thumb, the larger a star is, the shorter it's going to live for, because the faster it's going to burn through its fuel. But okay, so starting as giants, these stars are going to go through their fuel very, very quickly, and they're going to cyclically blow off their outer layers in what are called novas, and that's not a supernova, which we are going to talk about later. And then finally, the star is going to run out of fuel and not be able to fuse anything, and it's going to succumb to gravity, and at which point it's going to collapse inward, and then that is going to trigger a supernova, and that's going to also create a black hole or a neutron star. Okay, so the last 3 segments of the video will detail this, but for now we're going to move on to Marissa, who's going to be talking about protostars.